Welcome to the next installment of LIA100. My name is Leila Rao, and my guest today is Deb Preuss. She is a life coach based in Germany who delights in bringing joy back to work. Welcome.
Hi. Nice to be with you, Leila.
I'm so glad to have you here. I really want to talk about your journey to how you became the expert and coach that you are today, because you've had a pretty incredible journey.
I certainly didn't end up where I thought I would. In many ways. In many ways, here I am in Germany, but there's more to that story too.
I would love to hear it. Where did you start off? What did you think you were going to be?
I thought I was going to be a software developer. And I was in Canada. I grew up in Montreal, and that was where I worked for the first number of years in my career. And I just loved giving the customer, giving the user something that would make their life better, like showing it to them and they're going, oh, this is great. Like that was what I loved, was basically the look in their eyes. And I was working with an organization, with a consulting firm that I really felt was out of integrity, and I just couldn't stay there anymore. I couldn't deliver one more delivery that was release 1, knowing damn well they couldn't use it until release 2, and that they'd have to pay us for a whole nother development to get it in a state where they could release it. I couldn't do it anymore. So I looked for work, and things were moving faster over in Toronto. And that was where I ended up in an organization that was doing, working in a different way, working with people who are more empowered. And yet their process was running us into the ground. It was really disastrous. And so at Christmas time, I went home and got on the internet and I started searching, and I discovered Scrum. And I brought it back to the architect and I said, you know, I think there might be a better way to work. What about this? He said, oh yeah, I found that too. And so we asked management, could we swap out the project manager who was there, bring in another one, and try this method? Astonishingly, they said yes. And so that was the first team where we moved from everybody sitting and hiding from each other to actually crossing the floor and talking to each other through the different departments, technical, the business side, the more product-y side, going out and talking to people inside the business. So that was an aha for me. That really woke me up. And then we got shut down. Our team was cut because we were able to produce software that worked. So they felt that because they drastically had to cut costs because their other product was not working, they would cut our team and just keep the architect and the junior and let the whole team, 15 people, go, because they knew they could revive our product because we had working code with good naming standards and documentation. It never happened, of course. That went onto the shelf and died. But it gave me this taste for working with Agile. And so I went out and found a place where I could bring Agile in. And as I was doing this work, I was noticing that we have good methods for doing software, but I didn't have, as a facilitator, as a leader, I didn't have the skills to work with fear. And when you're bringing change, there's always going to be fear, and that is going to come in and undercut anything else you do. So I started asking questions about that, and the people I talked to didn't have answers. And so finally, I found an answer in, my first coach was Michael Spade. And he came to me. I don't remember where we met. We must have met at a conference or something. He came to me. Oh, yes, I worked at Capital One. And so we had been coworkers there. And he came to me and he asked, would I become a coaching client while he went through certification? And as we were doing this, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I do. I ask people questions. I listen deeply. Wow, I want to do this. And so I went and trained as a coach, thinking to bring the life coaching skills back to software. And in the end, what happened was I went to life coaching and discovered that was really my natural way of being. That was where I could provide so much more value with so much less friction for myself, a lot less wear and tear, and yet see a bigger outcome. So I decided not to come back into software, but rather to bring coaching in and coach the coaches.
Wow. That must have been a pivotal point when you said, okay, here was my plan, but here's something that looks even more intriguing. How did you get the confidence to go away from the plan?
Oh. That was never a concern. I'm not really big on plans, but what scared me was the safety. And so what I had done was I had already, when I moved to Toronto, I invested in a house. The house had appreciated, and I actually took money out of my house. I borrowed it back from my house so that I could have more of a quiet mind. And then I invested in coaching. And while I was investigating coaching, I discovered two programs that I liked. And I actually enrolled in both, which meant I really couldn't do much work. I was still working with Michigan Bertigue, doing a little consulting on the side, but I had to really keep it low. But I had the peace of mind because I had taken care of myself financially. So,
Okay. I really want to build upon that because I think that's something that a lot of them struggle with, including myself. How do you prioritize yourself, investing in yourself, self-care, the ability to say, think a little bit longer term and say, okay, I'm going to forego earning to invest in myself. Was that natural for you, or did you have to cultivate that skill?
I think it's part of my personality to take in the data and then sort of sit with it. Like, I think I'm probably your last interview for this series. And the reason is not that I didn't have time before. I could have fit you in, but the reason was that I wanted some time to sit with this idea of talking to you about this and think about what's important to me and feel about it. And so definitely at the time that I was making these choices, I was already working as a freelancer and I had time to just be at home and be still. And so I could feel, you can feel the ways open up and you can feel which things are giving you resistance, and you can choose, do I then find a way to overcome that resistance because it's important? Or do I take that as, let's find an easier path. Let's find a path that has more flow for me. So I think for me, it comes naturally. And maybe that's why I want to help bring that back into the community, because for others, maybe that goes forgotten, but I'm seeing that everybody can do that. Sometimes they just need more accountability or more structure around making room for it.
That's fascinating. And you mentioned flow earlier. Can you talk a little bit about what flow means to you and why it's so valuable?
So I use a lot of metaphors in my work and in my own thinking. And the image that came to me was like oil. Something, the way is lubricated. When you have flow, you don't have a lot of friction. You don't have a lot of things that are drawing your attention away from where you want to go. In play, children are playing. If they're playing that they're the captain of a ship, that's who they are. That's what they're doing. And so that's what I'm looking for. And that's one of the things that I'm feeling for when I'm being still, is where's the resistance? And not just resistance is bad, resistance in myself, or resistance in my community, in my world. Not that resistance is bad, it's just information. And then I say, so what do I want to do with that? It requires that I take that view, though.
No, it's something about the way you said flow made me think there was a story behind it, and I really wanted to understand that. So thank you. Can we talk a bit more about what does your professional life look like right now? Are you still forming a life coach work? Are you bringing in other elements to it? What does your work world look like now?
Wow. So I've spent the last, I've lost track, 5 years maybe, cutting things. So I stopped doing agile coaching because I really felt that the return in relation to the energy I was investing wasn't big enough for me for what I want to do. I'm not there. I don't care about bringing agile to the world. It's a tool. What I want is to bring that smile that you've got. I want to bring more joy to people. And so I wasn't bringing enough joy in that work. I see other people doing it. I'm not saying it can't be done. My husband works with teams. He's excellent. I work with Steve Hollier, who loves to go into teams that are resisting and help them understand and help them find their way. But for me, it was the one-on-one conversations. What was the question? What question are we pursuing here?
What does your work world look like these days?
I had to stop the thing that was chewing up my energy to make room to find out where my energy should go. And so I stopped doing agile consulting. And then I stopped doing open space facilitation. And there are a number of things that I've just reduced, and cut out a lot of email lists and reduce the stimuli so that I can hear myself. So now my working day is a lot of like unplanned time. People say, I go to your calendar and why is there so much space in it? Because I've made the space. When something comes up, for example, when the Stoves Network came and said, we want to have this meeting. It's in Switzerland, it's on the state, you probably can't make it, it's very soon, do you want to come? I looked at my calendar, I said, yes. Somebody else asked me to do something at a conference. I said, well, just a second, I'll tell you. He said, no, get back to me. I said, well, I can tell you right now. I looked at my calendar, I had a space. I said, yes, I put it in, it was done. Because what I'm finding is that I can say yes to the things that give me joy when I say no to the things that are just grinding.
That's an incredibly powerful lesson for the rest of us, I think. In order to be able to say yes to the things that really resonate, you have to first say no and clear space in your calendar.
And that space is the hard part, because you say no and you don't know what will fall into that space. That can feel really irresponsible, especially, for example, I'm not a single parent. If I were, I'd have serious financial security concerns. So we need to find ways to structure that so that we feel safe to make space for ourselves.
Sure, and I think the degree to which we can say yes and no is going to vary by each person, but the general concept is we have to have enough space in our system to be able to hear ourselves so that we can make choices that resonate more deeply. I think that's pretty powerful. You mentioned being able to speak at conferences and saying yes to things. How did you get involved with this community? What was your first experience like?
So the Agile User Group in Toronto, a lot of guys standing up front talking, a lot of like, ooh, we have an invited speaker, Joshua Karievsky's here from far away, yay! And then he'd speak, and I loved meeting Joshua, it was great, but then it was over and everybody left. I was like, what just happened? What an opportunity, we have these people here. So I went to the first Agile conference in 2007, I think, Agile 2007. And that was where I saw this vibrant community of people that were connecting with each other. And then within a year, I was doing open space work for Joe Rainsberger. He was running XP Days North America, and we would run it in Montreal and Toronto and New York City. In New York City, I met Naresh Jain, and we talked about bringing that vibrant conference experience to people more accessibly. So you don't have to pay huge money, a lot of travel time, your airfare. Let's make something that people can do regionally and teach each other. And so that was where we got the idea of Agile Coach Camp. And for me, I think that's been the centerpiece of my experience of this community.
I will just add that coaching camps are the highlights of my Agile community experience. So thank you very, very much. The first time I went to a coach camp, it was like coming home. And I've been totally hooked ever since. So thank you.
It's an example of being lazy. It's an example of not having to do it all. Naresh and I created it intentionally wanting it to go viral. So we built it on a wiki. We wrote down everything we did. We wrote the instructions. We left it there hoping it would happen. It's happened 100 times around the world with very little intervention from anybody. It spawned Play for Agile, which has run at least a dozen times, which has spawned Play 14, which I just noticed has run 44 times. All of that was because we planted a seed with an intention and a lot of care to create something where we could let it go and trust the people, because those people are totally trustworthy. That's why I keep working in this community. This community wants to change the world.
This is amazing. I've benefited from your work without really knowing how you've done it. So it's wonderful to share a bit of that. The community, I think, had what I call generosity of spirit, but we've also grown tremendously in the last 20 years. Do you feel like there's some things that we've lost track of, things that we could do better, or is this kind of the normal evolution of a community?
Yes, both. A community will change over time. So we know all models are wrong, some models are useful. I find the Moore crossing the chasm model helpful in my thinking, in that I came in with the not the innovators, but the people who were on the leading edge. And there was that energy there and that excitement and passion, and let's try something and let's fail and then make it work. And we've gone over the hump, we've crossed the chasm, and we're in a place where different kinds of people are coming into this movement. We need to respect them, and we need to care for them, just as we cared for ourselves and each other at the beginning, but their needs are different. So I've just been reading Coactive Leadership. And what was really interesting was to discover this type of leadership, which is so me, which is called leadership in the field, which is sensing what is going on and putting the pieces together and seeing the patterns. And so, do things need to be changed? Yes. And I can't change everything, so I have to feel which is my place to step in and change. And then my way of bringing change is not to come in and stand at the front. Lisa loves to stand at the front, and she's good at it, and I love it. She does lots of other things too that people don't necessarily see. But my way is to influence. So I have one-on-one conversations with a lot of people. I haven't been in America for 10 years. I know what's going on over there to a certain degree. And those conversations are, they're generative in that I'm helping people just get stuff off their chest and talk and get it out there. And then for example, I started to see some bad patterns coming into the Agile Coach Camp community through the Bar Camp community, where they use a sort of open space with what I consider practices that close the space. Like, okay, now we're going to vote on all these themes. Who wants to go to this one? 2 people. Okay, we won't do that one. I'm like, what are we doing? And I've heard people in events, like at a bar camp, say, oh, I guess just the old timers come and speak, and the new people will speak at the next one. I'm like so horrified. So I wanted to change that, but that's a big systemic problem. I change it by creating conversations. So I decided to teach open space. And those people who teach open space will then help me model a certain way of doing it and influence others. Those people are now leading in Scrum gatherings and ALE in Europe and in organizations. Again, hands off, sow the seeds, give resources, create empowerment, and then trust those people to help make the change that you need.
I love the consistent pattern in your story about empowering other people, trust people to carry on something that you may have started, but that you don't necessarily want to keep ownership of.
And then I realized that I had backed too far off. I was sitting there going, oh, that's icky. And I was so far away from it that I had no connection to it. That was why I started creating the conversations. And so finding that balance, coming back, for me, that was coming back not as the person who's leading by doing, but the person who's supporting was a shift for me. And coming back as a person who encourages and asks good questions and helps people to see their own work better. So moving more into a wise woman role, stepping into that and owning it. Like, yeah, this is one way to move the rock better. Like you don't have to push the rock yourself. You can use a lever.
That's incredibly powerful, and I think very hard, shifting our own mindset to tap into a different set of skills than perhaps the ones that we're used to using initially. What's that journey been like for you?
I'm decluttering my house. I got married in a whirlwind and left my house, my car, my country, and moved. And I said, damn it, I'm leaving on February 17th, come hell or high water, which meant that I didn't get to go through all my stuff. So boxes of notes marked old Agile clients and, this method, and they're still sitting here after 11 years. And I'm finally decluttering. We took 20 bags of books to charity yesterday and nobody wanted them. I put them online. And what was the question? Welcome to my age.
I think changing behaviors, sometimes we're better at coaching other people in how to change behaviors than changing our own behaviors.
You asked about what was it like changing the skill set. So my skill set is still in the boxes because it was part of me. I was so invested, and it was really hard to let go of that. And I had to actually stop. This was part of my 5 years of stepping back and let go of it and say, other people are doing this work. I'm not going to do it anymore. And I actually stopped going to Agile conferences for a while. And when I came back, I showed up in an open space with a big sign on my shirt that said, I am not an Agile coach. Because people weren't getting it. I'm a life coach. I coach one-on-one. I coach human beings. I'm not interested in the software anymore. You're interested in the software. I want to help you do that. So it was a bit of a wrench. And now it's easy to give the books away because I've made that separation. But you just can't juggle it all. It's too much. And I had to choose the thing that I love and let go of the other thing. It wasn't easy.
No, thank you. I will agree with you that Agile is not a what, it's a how. It's something that we use to deliver something else to people. I think we've been kind of covering this all along, but I do want to specifically ask you, what would be your advice for other women who are facing some of the challenges that you face in your journey about perhaps letting go of a plan, perhaps having to shift to a new skill set?
Make time for conversations. They change you. Whether you go to a coach camp where you will meet new friends or new colleagues or new partners, I sometimes see somebody interesting on Twitter and I say, well, let's have a chat, and we get online. I've definitely made friends on Twitter by noticing who I have resonance with. But you have to make time for those conversations. And in those conversations, you will hear yourself say important things. Coaching is kind of coaching is a microcosm of that, of course. You commit to yourself to spend an hour on the phone, and who does all the talking? You do. It's my chance to mirror back to you how amazing you are and how frustrated you are and how much you dream of something. It's like a magnifier to hear yourself.
It is, and that's how it should be. And if you find a good coach, if you are a coach, you should be holding up a mirror to help people recognizing themselves. Absolutely. Is there anything else that you want to add? Because I think we are running out of time.
If you're helping other people, you must put yourself first or you'll burn out. I'm tired of hearing people brag about how many air mile points they have. This is not what I want modeled in my community. I would like people to be joyful. Don't settle for less than joy.
That is a powerful way to end this conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Leila.